Just 9 days into his second term, and Donald Trump is already making some aggressive moves that are rattling Washington and raising serious constitutional questions. Some call it chaos. Others say it's a direct challenge to the foundations of American democracy. The latest flashpoint is that the Trump administration suddenly halted federal grant payments this week. Now, what are these federal grant payments? Now, these are funds that support everything from police departments to disaster relief to domestic violence shelters and even nutrition programs. The administration says it needed to review the spending to ensure it aligned with President Trump's executive orders, specifically his ban on diversity programs. But the move had immediate and some massive consequences, so much so that a federal judge stepped in and blocked it. And here's why. Legal experts say that this is a big deal. The Constitution of the United States of America gives the U.S. Congress, not the President, the power of the purse. It's the U.S. Congress that decides how federal money is spent, and a law passed 50 years ago, 50, the Impoundment Control Act explicitly says a president cannot just freeze or withhold funding at will. Even some Republicans were caught off guard. Senator Kevin Cramer, a Trump ally from North Dakota, admitted, and I quote, "I think he's testing the limits of his power, and I don't think any of us are surprised by it," unquote. But most Republicans are not pushing back. They're standing by Trump, arguing that he has the right to ensure federal funds align with his administration's priorities. And this is just the latest in a string of aggressive moves by Trump since returning to the White House. He has already fired key watchdogs, removing inspectors from federal agencies without warning, a move that even U.S. Congress says violates federal law. He's reviving his hardline stance on immigration, calling the situation at the border an invasion, despite reports that crossings are actually down. And perhaps most controversially, he is requiring loyalty pledges from federal employees, removing career officials from critical roles in the Justice Department to replace them with his own people. Just last night, the Trump administration made another stunning move, offering cash payouts to federal workers if they agree to resign by the end of next week. That means he's actively trying to reshape the federal workforce, and fast. Of course, all of this is triggering a wave of lawsuits. In Seattle, a federal judge halted Trump's attempt to revoke birthright citizenship, calling it a blatant violation of the Constitution of the U.S. In Washington, Democratic attorneys general are taking Trump to court over his spending freeze, with one calling the move careless and a direct assault on the U.S. Congress. And across the country, legal experts are warning that Trump's strategy isn't just about testing the limits of his presidential powers, it's about pushing past them. Georgetown law professor Josh Chaffetz put it bluntly, and I quote, "The thing that prevents the president from being an absolute monarch is the U.S. Congress controlling the money," unquote. Without that check, he says, the country risks dismantling the system of government that has held it together for more than 200 years. So what happens next? Well, right now, Trump's most controversial orders are stuck in court, with key hearings scheduled in the coming weeks. But even if he loses these legal battles, experts say that may not even matter. Because for Trump, the strategy isn't about winning in court, it's about pushing the boundaries of presidential powers and forcing institutions to catch up. And let's be clear, if these moves go unchallenged, they set a new precedent, one where the president has more power than ever before. As one analyst put it, even when Trump loses, he wins. Now, this is not just about legal battles, it's about how far Trump will go and whether anyone can stop him.
A US judge on Tuesday temporarily blocked part of the Trump administration's sweeping directive to pause federal loans, grants, and other financial assistance. In a Washington, D.C. federal court hearing, US District Judge Lauren Ali Khan ordered the White House to not block funding to existing programs until February 3rd, a win for advocacy groups who said the policy would be devastating. President Donald Trump's White House ordered billions of dollars of federal grants and loans to be frozen, which could disrupt education and healthcare programs, disaster relief, and other initiatives. Earlier on Tuesday, a coalition of attorneys general announced they would sue Trump's pause of federal funding. 6 states, including New York, Massachusetts, and California, said the lawsuit was meant to preserve essential funding for Americans. Here's California's Rob Banter.
We will not stand by while the president attempts to disrupt vital programs that feed our kids, provide medical care to our families, and support housing in our communities. We won't stand by while the president breaks the law and oversteps his authority as outlined in our Constitution, a Constitution he swore an oath to uphold just 1 week ago.
The acting head of the Office of Management and Budget, which oversees the federal budget, said the money would be put on hold to ensure it aligned with the president's priorities, including executive orders he signed ending diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. New York Attorney General Letitia James said 20 states, including New York, were blocked from Medicaid's payment system, a public health insurance program for low-income people. The White House said Medicaid was exempted and no payments had been affected. Georgetown University law professor Stephen Vladek said the funding halt runs afoul of Congress's legislative control of public funding.
This is a nuclear-tipped broadsword. And to allow this kind of program to go forward would not just have immediate, harsh, deleterious effects on all kinds of segments of society. It would really pretty radically reorient the separation of powers in this country away from the legislature and toward the executive.
Vladek said he expects the administration to walk back the policy or lose in court. The US Justice Department, which would defend the policy in court, did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear to any Americans who are watching at home who may be a little bit confused about some of the media reporting. This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. It is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this. And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken.
A major legal battle is unfolding in the US over transgender military rights. Advocacy groups have filed a lawsuit against President Trump's executive order restricting transgender service members. The move has sparked an outcry from activists and military personnel, including Navy Commander Emily Schilling, who has been preparing for months for potential restrictions.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Monday that took aim at transgender troops. The order said that expressing a, quote, gender identity different from an individual's sex at birth did not meet military standards, and that a man identifying as a woman was, quote, not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member. A day later, transgender rights advocacy groups filed a lawsuit against the order, saying it violated the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment. Navy Commander Emily Schilling is a test pilot and combat veteran who leads Sparta, an advocacy group for transgender troops. She says transgender service members began preparing for possible restrictions well in advance of Trump's election win.
In preparation for a potential ban, Sparta has started over a year ago training ambassadors We brought them in and trained them how to talk to media, how to talk to generals and admirals, how to talk to Congress people. That way, the stories that really matter about trans service members bringing strength to our service, bringing their individual courage to the fight can be told rather than how they might be a detriment.
Trump's order banned the use of what it called, quote, invented pronouns in the military. However, it did not answer basic questions, including whether transgender soldiers currently serving would be allowed to stay, and if not, how they would be removed.
Removing transgender troops from active service today will have a detrimental effect on our combat readiness. These individuals are deployed worldwide. They're right now already embedded in units. We have transgender troops in South Korea. We have them in Japan. We have them on aircraft carriers across the world. And when you remove those individuals for their identity, you remove their talents and their specialized skills. Who's going to replace them?
Department of Defense data shows the military has about 1.3 million active duty personnel. While transgender rights advocates say there are as many as 15,000 transgender service members, officials say the number is in the low thousands. Schilling said Sparta membership had grown 10% since the election to 2,200 members, many of them senior enlisted members.